Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Good morning, I'm Karl Fitzpatrick and welcome to Business Matters. Well, Hardware Association Ireland has developed a 4-point plan which would ensure the sustainability of the industry after COVID-19. Martin Markey, the CEO of the association, joins me now to discuss this proposal in more detail. Martin, before we delve into the association's proposal, provide us with an insight into the size and scale of the industry in Ireland at present.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Karl. Well, just looking at the hardware sector, the hardware and builders merchanting sector, according to the company's registration office, it has a turnover of about 2.4 billion. So it's quite a significant sector. There are 26,000 employees in the sector, and probably between suppliers and retailers, probably about 600 to 700 operators in it, independent businesses.
So as you say, there's 600 or 700 operators. Now, there's a couple of different types of structure within the industry itself in terms of ownership. Talk to us a little bit about that, please.
Well, I suppose it is divided up amongst, for want of a better term, buying groups such as Topline and Expert and Allied Merchants and Home Value, and many of what would have at one time been independent retailers around the country have joined with either of those groups or each of those groups over the years. So you have the buying groups, and then you have the larger corporates such as Grafton Group, which would now be Chadwick's, and also other independently owned multi-branch or multi-site operators such as TJ O'Mahony from the HPC Group and Brooks and a number of other key operators.
Is the industry having any problems in relation to attracting younger people into it?
It has had, like a lot of other sectors over the last couple of years, it has been a challenge to get new blood into the sector, undoubtedly, and there have been a number of initiatives in place to try and attract young people into the sector. But it has been hitherto, anyway. It definitely has been a challenge. Yeah, absolutely.
And what do you put that challenge down to, Martin?
I suppose retail itself is often not looked upon as a valuable career, and I would beg to differ on that. But it does have a perception, and also pathways. People don't necessarily see a career path within the hardware sector. Although there is one there, but it's not commonly accepted or known that there is such a thing.
Once the government began to relax restrictions after COVID-19, did your members enjoy a surge in demand? And if so, has it continued on?
Well, if we look at, I suppose, Karl, if we look at demand overall, if we look at last year the market grew in value by about 5%, and the first quarter of this year, again, we saw another 5% growth, and certainly in January and into February, we were very happy that was going to continue. And then COVID came. Now we don't have any clear figures, or we don't have any numbers yet for quarter two. So what we're talking about is speculation for the impact of COVID and what has happened there. But I suppose we've lost, in reality, we've lost 2.5 months of business. And since the shops have reopened, since the merchants and the hardware shops have reopened, we have seen a surge in demand, certainly in the domestic end. That is for sure. We've seen something of a demand there, but that doesn't mitigate the loss of 2.5 months of the heavier side, the build side of the marketplace.
And Martin, what's the split of income for a typical member of the Hardware Association of Ireland between commercial and domestic?
We estimate the market itself is probably about 60-40, 60 heavy construction, heavy build construction products, and the other 40% DIY or light hardware. So that would tend to be the average, but it is very much an average. Because there is huge differences between members and operators in the sector.
And are your members seeing a pick-up in the construction sector generally across the country?
Well, speaking to the CIF yesterday, they're estimating that by end of year there'll be 16,000 new builds. Unfortunately, that's down from the target of 24.5 that we had at the beginning of the year, and it's well shy of demand for 35k that would be needed to clear the backlog. So there has been uplift in it, some uplift in it, but again, it's not going to compensate for the loss of 2.5 months business. And also, one thing that we need to be mindful of, we're still in the crosshairs of Brexit, and that could be another major challenge for our members towards the end of the year.
And as a result of COVID, the Hardware Association of Ireland recently published the Rebuilding Our Future strategy. What does that consist of, Martin?
Well, I suppose what it is, Karl, it's largely an investment strategy, because if we look at what we've just discussed, and we are with some of those figures, we are potentially looking at a bleak economic winter. The central bank are talking about 15% unemployment. If we're hit with COVID again, we could be looking at not just a bleak economic future, but a socially isolated or a socially estranged future. But that is a choice, and we've outlined a 4-point plan called Rebuilding Our Future, and it has 4 key recommendations for government, and this does rest within government, and it is a choice of government to invest in the economy, and we'd like to think that this is it's built on proven schemes that have worked in the past. The 4 main pillars of the plan are the home renovation incentive scheme. We're also looking at a plan for energy retrofitting of homes, support for those buying a home, particularly first-time buyers, and also upskilling the sector and reskilling new employees. So they're the four key elements of the plan that we're looking at.
So the home renovation incentive scheme, specifically, what are you looking for government to do?
Okay, well, the home renovation incentive scheme, your listeners may have heard of it before, and they may have availed of it before, but it was a scheme for renovating property that was in existence from the latter end of 2013 until December 2018. Highly successful. Very, very successful scheme to breathe life into the economy and breathe life into the sector. There were 94,000 properties availed of the scheme, and it injected, according to the revenue commissioners, it injected 2.5 billion into the economy. Essentially, it's based on people getting the VAT, about 13.5% back on any project that they do on their home. Well, any project that is mandated by the scheme itself. So we're looking for that to be reintroduced. We think it'll be a major, major plus. It also employed 13,000 contractors, and while it was in existence.
So you're also calling for a retrofitting programme to be introduced. How will that differ to the home renovation incentive scheme?
Well, we're looking at using part of the model of the home renovation incentive scheme, because it's tried and tested, and applying it to a very targeted retrofitting scheme. And we're looking at targeting homes with the lower hanging fruit, Karl, those for whom it's more cost effective on a national level to do a retrofitting scheme. So we're looking at those homes with a BER rating of C and D, and whereby the government will grant aid to the extent of about 50%, the upgrading of those to a B rating. Now, that will entail a considerable decrease in the cost of heating a home, a decrease of about 25%, which is a major cost advantage over a number of years for the householder and also for the country, because of the amount we're going to save in terms of energy and also in terms of carbon emissions, which is absolutely key to this as well.
And of course, with the Greens back in government, there's probably never been a better time to get a scheme like that introduced. It must be something that you've welcomed.
Well, we'll welcome it when it comes to fruition, Karl. So let's hope it does, because it's got huge benefits. And the good thing about it is, when it's done, it's done. For those who have the retrofitting finished, that's over and done with. It's a one-off cost, and we've put together one scenario which is basically cost neutral, because we're talking about not alone reducing the costs of energy, but also creating demand for about 13,000 new green jobs. So, there's a huge benefit to the country in terms of employment and in terms of for the government, PRSI and all the other monies that accrue to the public purse.
And of course, there is a Help to Buy scheme in place for first-time buyers, but you feel it's not fit for purpose. Why so?
It's not a major help to, especially first-time buyers, younger people in terms of housing have had a very raw deal in the country. I think the most recent figures I've seen have said that about 47% of people between the ages of 25 and 29 are actually living at home with their parents, and that's up from 37%, which I would have thought was an extremely high figure 10 years ago. So, and also housing, if going back to earlier in the year, any market research amongst people under 30, housing was the key element. It was the key thing that drove them to vote and influenced their vote majorly. So the current Help to Buy scheme isn't very useful because it doesn't include second-hand homes. So we're looking at including second-hand homes in the Help to Buy scheme. I think that would be a major plus because at the moment, a young couple, and if you take, I know it's a cliche, but nonetheless it's still true, if you take a nurse and a guard, people who are at the forefront in the fight against COVID over the last few months, they certainly can't afford to buy a new home in the Greater Dublin area and also in many of the cities and towns around the country. So if we extend the Help to Buy scheme to the second-hand homes, it would help overcome that in many respects.
Of course, reskilling is also a priority within your Rebuilding Our Future strategy. What do you want the government to do in that regard?
Well, we do need to we do need to invest in reskilling and upskilling because we're looking at in some cases, if you talk about retrofitting, we're talking about 13,000, 14,000 new jobs, and some of the key skills that we will require for retrofitting don't really exist at the moment. And in many ways, some of the skills are a hybrid of plumbing and an electrician. So what we need to do, I suppose, medium to longer term, is to take some of the lessons, and we've been very successful in progressing our third level education systems and colleges, etc., and take some of the learning from that and bring it into the apprenticeship arena because we are going to need a tens of thousands of apprentices going forward. There's no question about that. We're going to need people with practical problem-solving skills, and we're going to need plenty of them.
So, Martin, you're currently lobbying the government to make that a reality. But as you look to the future and you look over the next 12 months, what is the Hardware Association of Ireland's outlook for the economy?
Well, it is very dependent. We could be looking at a very bleak situation going forward. But we believe that if the government makes the correct investments, makes the good investments, we are looking at possibly restoring confidence in the economy. We're looking at delivering 20,000 between renovation and retrofitting 20,000 high caliber jobs. We're looking at letting 1.5 billion flow into the economy per year for 10 years. We're looking at reducing our home heating bill by 25%, saving about 6.4 billion over 10 years. Retrofitting 50,000 homes per year in a way that's cost neutral for housing and at a minimum cost to the government, and giving first-timers a new deal by including second-hand homes in the Help to Buy scheme. So we'd like to think it's a compelling plan. We think people tend to go to hardware shops for advice and workable and practical advice. We'd like to think that this plan is that. It's also been overseen by Professor Ronan Lyons of Trinity College and two tax experts from PwC. So hopefully it will go a long way towards, as we say, rebuilding our future.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Martin Markey, the CEO of Hardware Association Ireland, and I hope that the proposed renovation and retrofitting schemes will come to fruition.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.